today I wanted to talk a little bit about men and emotions. There's a lot of incense in the room. I don't know if it looks smoky to you, but it feels kind of nice, I guess, you know. It makes me want to cough a bit too. So yeah, let's get started now on this topic. So I'm guessing people can hear me okay. I'll just quickly check, because if I want to read the messages I need to bring it up on my computer, unfortunately. So yeah, one of the things I work with clients on a lot is emotions, and I work on emotions as a form of emotions as an energy. Okay, so obviously, you know, we know the kind of feeling of a welling up emotion, right? But even if we look at it in the Taoist stroke Chinese theory, philosophy, medicine sort of term, and we can actually see, for example, certain emotions have certain movements of energy. For example, I think you can all understand anger has an upward movement of energy, right? Does that make sense? Do you agree? Okay, let me know. What do you think of anger? Does it move up? Does it move down? Side to side? We say it has an upward movement, and we say that grief is like a heavy pulling down of energy, you know, and also that, for example, kidneys is like a push forward. Sorry, I should say fear. Fear is a push forward. When we look at like these emotions, not in terms of like what is the story around it, what's going on, you know, with it, but when we just look at it as a pure energy, you know, the emotion, it takes on like a different form, and when we work on it just as an energy, instead of working on it as a kind of a, you know, a whole story, you know, which was often shrouded in guilt and shame and so on, about the fact we're even weak enough to show these emotions, you know, it suddenly then becomes like much easier to be able to understand and work with emotions. Now, I use the title Men and Emotions because, well, first of all, I work with a lot of men. I have worked with a lot of men. I've worked with thousands of men around their emotions, their sexuality, and but in particular, I mean, when people say emotions, it's funny, I had a conversation just around Christmas with an old friend who's very much of the old school type of thinking that, you know, emotions are weakness, men should never show emotions, but he's there watching a football game going, yeah, getting all, it is emotional, right, about the football game, yeah? And I'm like, oh, it's funny, you say men don't show emotions, but here you are getting all emotional about some people on the screen kicking a ball around a field, you know, which he kind of was a little bit sort of, you know, he was a little surprised and perhaps not completely happy about me saying that. But when we look at social conditioning, and obviously we have nature, we have nurture, we can say, but social conditioning, it tends to teach males that you must repress all your feelings. You know, even a lot of men literally do believe if they show what we call emotion in whatever way, showing emotion, the act of showing emotion, is going to leave literally everybody who loves them to just turn away from them, abandon them, you know. And I think many of us women, we don't actually understand how much pressure, how deeply indoctrinated many men are in this belief, and how much pressure this puts on men. Because when our emotions, you know, when we look at it from the Taoist form, our emotions should be a flow. It's an energy flowing around us, you know, and when these are all flowing, it's all good. You know, we say you should be able to go into anger, you should be able to go into fear, just like you should go into happiness and love, because these energies are all what make up a part of us. It's only when these energies get blocked and stuck inside of our bodies that there is like a kind of a problem, because then we have an energy blockage, essentially, you know. So it's not to say that, you know, that all men will repress their emotions. I know men that have been raised with a very healthy emotional expression, which I think is, you know, is a beautiful thing when you see it. But I suppose what I've noticed often can happen with with men is, on the one hand, this, okay, you need to repress your emotions, you can't show it, and then people like me, you know, start saying, well, show your emotions, be vulnerable and so on, and suddenly it's just like, oh my god, all this stuff that's been getting bottled up for this entire, you know, lifetime and many lifetimes before, you're suddenly letting the cat out of the bag. And obviously, I mean, especially if you're someone that's always been kind of putting up a brick wall, you know, which many men do put up a brick wall, and I've known, you know, women to leave their male partners because there's just a brick wall and the man is doing what he thinks he should be doing, what he's always been told. But the woman, obviously she wants to feel some sort of emotional connection, but because I would say all of us, both men and women, have been given such bad education around emotions, you know, and then what very often happens with this emotional repression is that sexual problems then build up on top of that, which is why we need to clear out the energy field holding emotions before we can work with the sexual energy. And it's really important to do this, because I don't believe that any kind of practice with sexual energy can be effective without first clearing out the emotional field. Now, as I mentioned, so the way that I work with Taoist alchemy, what we do is we hack into the body, and particularly the emotions, the organs which gather the emotions, and start to balance these emotions out and start to get to know ourselves. Now, after about 5 weeks of this process, I then suggest to try to start what I call like practicing vulnerability, which means talking about how we feel. The reason I don't say right at the beginning to practice vulnerability is it can be very difficult, you know, to just say, okay, now all this stuff I've been holding back and repressing and I don't feel comfortable with, I don't feel confident about, I'm suddenly going to start talking about. That in and of itself can be like really traumatic. And in fact, I remember when I first started learning to practice vulnerability with some people that were into Tantra, and I remember there was one guy who's still a dear friend, you know, and I am very grateful to him, that he prodded me and poked me and got me crying and got me being vulnerable, and it's like, oh Jade, I love you so much more when you're being vulnerable, and I'm like, no, what are you doing to me? Because it was so foreign to me, you know, to be vulnerable, because I'd spent my whole life being tough and so on, you know. But in order to be able to get into like a healthy relationship with our emotions, and to be able to use those with other people in an intelligent way, because when we get the skill to intelligently use our emotions, these can become like an amazing, incredible tool to be able to build intimacy, build connection, increase pleasure, get a better relationship, essentially. Because actually, when you look at statistics, in divorce, yes, 70% of divorces is initiated by the woman, and when you get to the level of college, university educated women like myself, 90% of divorces are initiated by women. And obviously people will say, well, women do better out of divorces. It's not entirely untrue, but I don't think anybody wants to just divorce for the sake of it. Something's got to get to a certain point where it feels like the relationship is just harming one more than it's helping, you know. And I think this is why it's so important for all of us, you know. And I think women can be in their own way very bad with not being in touch with their emotions. And I would say, like, something I've noticed as a part of that is also basically being able to also understand that, you know, and this is a mistake I made in the past as well, your man is not a brick wall. He may try very hard to hide his emotions and to seem like the man that society tells him he's supposed to be, but very often men are really hurting and in need of us actually being able to, you know, come out of our own victimhood and victim mentality and actually start to see, you know, what's going on with the men and how really truly vulnerable men are. And this is something I learned especially when I was doing tantric massage. And I suppose you know, okay, fair enough, I was doing a lot of work on myself and cultivating a lot of self-awareness, but at the same time, what I just came to realize was how absolutely completely vulnerable men were, and the amount of men that would say to me, you know, I've never told this to anyone before, but ... whatever came next, you know. And just coming into a realization, and I suppose in a way like holding tenderly and lovingly, you know, and learning to hold space as well, and to understand this whole world that's going on, that is a result of nurture, that is a result of social conditioning and social programming, where men are being disconnected from their feelings, and the result we see is high levels of mental illness, suicide, criminality, and drug use, substance misuse, and so on, coming amongst men, because men simply are feeling so unable. And of course, when it's being drummed from a very, very young age, boys don't cry, don't show your feelings, and so on and so forth, you know. And most people, the very majority of people, including people who are delinquents and criminals and so on, are just doing what they've been told to do. They're following society's norms, they're following the standards of society, but this is taking them to a place where, I mean, I was seeing 40% statistic, I don't know, 40% of men suffer with premature ejaculation, so you would say that maybe of men not being able to control, not having full control, it might be double that number, you know. And this is a very clear being in flight or fight, having an emotional overload, essentially. That's the cause of this kind of issue, as well as just many, many other issues like porn addiction and overuse is definitely like also something that's caused by this like build-up of emotions. So whether you're a woman who's watching this, who has like men in your life, you know, I think bringing in the awareness about actually like how vulnerable men are, you know, and although we are feminine and we are in a way vulnerable as well, that we also, certainly when it comes to the energy field and when it comes to the emotions, we are extremely powerful, you know. And learning and exercising our own awareness around what we're doing emotionally. And for example, you know, something as well I became aware of, that, you know, it's so easy to look at someone and get triggered and judged and upset with them and so on and so forth, and then say something, which it might be that the man is in there doing whatever he thinks was the thing that he's been told to do out of the best interest of you, not out of being selfish or inconsiderate or whatever, you know. And it can come across as being really like hurtful, the thing that we can say, you know, the way we can look at things, and as women I have done, and women can do, you know, that actually we cause a problem and then go into victim mode ourselves, and then leave the man there that's suffering, you know, for the situation that we created. And, you know, in terms of if you're a man watching this, I think like getting to understand your emotions is so important as well. And I'd just like to say, I'm about to finish off what I have to say, so if you have any comments, please put them into the chat. Getting to understand and know your own emotions. And, you know, I'm not saying that I'm against going and talking to a psychologist, but psychology can be extremely limited. It can just go round and round in circles, you know. I think for everybody, obviously learning to articulate can be a gift, yeah, you know, learning to express ourselves. But when we are just going round and round, and I speak to so many people, and it's especially men, that therapy failed the men, because I think therapy tends to be more aimed towards the particular energies of women, and I would say the same thing about Tantra. Tantra tends to be aimed more towards the energies of women, whereas what's healing for men, there seems to be much less available to men. Plus, men often have like less of a community to stand in together. So through the particular practice of Taoist alchemy, which allows us to literally like hack into the energy field, hack into the body, unblock the energy, you know, and it doesn't require going into the story, and it can have very fast results, even with like diagnosed mental illness and use of medication and so on. And by the way, I'm going to just say here, just cutting into this to add into this, I mean, one of the things like I love about men, and especially many of the men I know, is, okay, me myself, you know, I'm a highly complicated person, you know, everything's like this, you know, so many different things fitting together. I'm always looking at all these complexities, whereas it tends to be with men, and especially the ones that I gravitate towards, they're just simple. It's just so simple, you know. And it's like when we look at a trauma, we can go into the story, and of course there's nothing wrong with going into the story if it's what's needed. We're going to know it and we're going to do it. But being dragged into the story can often just take us round and round and round, like a broken washing machine, instead of just actually looking at, okay, what's here is going on, is blocking, let's just get it out, you know. So I'd like to see if anybody has any questions. Men's circles, yeah, and I love the men's groups that I do, that I've done, and I think that it's such an important chance to have, you know, and I think that men getting together and starting to talk about this stuff and starting to talk more, you know, is so important. And I suppose the one thing I would say is, and that I learned in terms of practicing vulnerability, is, you know, when we've been very like boundaried and putting a lot of, you know, walls around oneself and so on, you know, and we decide to start going on the vulnerability journey, this is my advice, right? You know, just start talking little things, yeah. You know, it might not be like apt to just go straight into like our biggest trauma and start talking about it when we're not comfortable with being vulnerable. So it can work well to just start with little things we feel vulnerable about, or even just make something up that you feel vulnerable about, so you can't even get hurt if it's that difficult, and tell someone and gauge someone's reaction, because some people are capable of vulnerability, other people are not. Also, everybody's ability to be vulnerable is a work in progress. It can grow or it can shrink, indeed, you know. But when we start to talk about things, when we start to look into, you know, what is it that we really feel? Who is it that we really are? You know, and start to accept and come to terms with things, it's like we really start to then be able to really actually find our potential and find our strength and find our power. And all these feelings like fears, worries, and so on, you know, these are actually powerful emotions that can really, really help us on our way in life. And vulnerability is its own power, exactly, you know. And if you guys don't know yet, I'm doing another 3-day challenge, right? It's starting, I think, not next week, but the week after, so in around 10 days, on the 14th, in under 10 days. So make sure you sign up, okay? You need to get emails. The emails will give you the link, right? It will give you some instructions, including how you can enter a free giveaway with me. We're going to be looking at these shadows. We're going to be looking at emotions, right? The first day we're going to be looking at getting an understanding of what shadows are and what are their gifts. Second day, this is something a bit special I've organized. We're going to have like a kind of a vulnerability orgy, right? Yeah, so we're going to go in there and we're going to talk about all the things, and this one is not going to be recorded, so you must attend it live. It's not even going into the Facebook group. if you wanna be there, right, you must come to it live. And we're going to all talk about things like we've been bullied about, embarrassed about, things that, you know, our personality aspects that we thought we needed to find, and really bring these out into the open and embrace them. So that's going to be on the Wednesday. And then on the Thursday, we're going to be going into looking how this kind of shadow work actually can increase our ability to experience pleasure and intimacy and have like way better orgasms. So Danny, please reach out to me in a DM if you want access to this group. And if there's any men here that are wanting to know more about this group, that want to know a little bit more about these practices, please do feel free to reach out to me directly. Also, joining the 3-day challenge is going to be like really helpful to you as well. And yeah. So I'd like to just leave for any more questions if anybody's got anything else to ask right now. But feel free to reach out in the DM, and also if you want some more resources around this, I've got like some free masterclasses and other resources on this topic. Like I have a worksheet all about emotions and how the emotions live in our bodies and our sexual organs. So if you want any of these free resources, either reach out to us in the DM or do drop a comment, and we'll get back to you probably tomorrow by now. So I hope that you have enjoyed this live event. It's going to be in the group if you've come in late, that you can rewatch the recording. So have a great evening, and if you're in my group tonight, see you in 6 minutes.